What is up, everybody? My name is Whooped, and this is Film Study Coaching. We're going to be taking a look at Donix's replay and giving him insight on how to improve. He's a 1900 MMR level player. His opponent is top 25 in the world. He says he needs to work on chaff and chaff clear, and in particular struggles against carry Mustangs. For those of you watching, even if you aren't 1900 MMR, there's still a lot of information you can learn. And if you enjoyed the content, please consider liking, subscribing, or joining the channel as a member. Alright, so we got Donix in the blue as Typhoon Specialist. He's starting Saber and Fang, dropped a couple arc lights. And his opponent, the top 25 in the world, is Training Specialist with Steel Balls and Fangs. Steel Balls and Fangs is an interesting starting lineup, I'd have to say. Donix coming out with the pretty typical aggro lineup, looks pretty good. His opponent not going for the headbutt, of course they can't see each other. Okay, so his opponent actually opted for the Mustangs and he uses Training Specialist perk right now, and the reason he did that is because if he would have waited around, there is a technical chance he could level up the Mustangs, but it's not likely. But then he'd be delayed in when he gets it back again. So he's using it now based on the fact that they wouldn't upgrade anyway, which is probably accurate. And then he's going to get the perk again to use sooner rather than later, right? That's very smart on his opponent, but it also lets you know right off the bat that he's going to go carry Mustangs, right? Because having Training Specialists dropping Mustangs all but guarantees you can go carry Mustangs, but at the same time you're playing your card super early, so if you're Donix, you know exactly what's coming. Kind of unfortunate tower timings, but it is what it is on round one. Nothing too bad so far. For you, I want to see you take the crawlers, but if you wanted to defend the tower, then vertical sledgehammers would also make sense. Your opponent is 100% going to choose the crawlers because he didn't use both deployments in round one since he dropped the Mustangs, which means he's going to try to play catch up a little bit, add some chaff. But I'm not entirely sure you're going to try to defend this right now. But if you did, vertical sledges somewhere around here would make sense. So you got more arc lights coming. Looks like you're going to go into some sort of carry arc game. And that actually makes sense. Arc lights are really good into Mustangs. And you already have, the saber tooth, for the steel balls until the arc lights can get set up a little bit. 100% don't add this missile. Definitely don't do that. It's not going to give you any value. His crawlers are going to do this mini split. And so your missile's going to end up killing like half a pack of crawlers. It's just not going to give you any value whatsoever. All right, looks like you went for mass recruitment and got another arc light down. I think that's fine. If you're going to go carry arcs, it makes sense. Watch this missile. Yep, didn't even kill a single thing. It's a waste of 50 in round two, which is a pretty big deal. So I think you should take the shield or skip. All right, so you took the missile strike, and I don't think that's going to give you a lot of value right now because 100% your opponent is going to shield his Mustangs. And you know this because they're the most important DPS on his board right now. They are going to be his carry. So he's not going to want to have his carry unit lose the XP. So it's 100% worth a shield. But this is, compounded by the fact that shield was available to take. So 100% certainty that these Mustangs are going to be covered. So if you did take the missile, you're going to have to go for, probably those fangs, and that's just not going to give you a lot of value. I think shield or skipping would have been a little bit better. Yeah, so you missile the Mustangs. There's no, yeah, exactly. There's no chance he's going to let that slide. Charge shot. Charge shot, huh? Very interesting. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I actually kind of like it. You have a little bit of a redundancy issue right now between your sabers and your arc lights. Sabers are single target high DPS for the most part, obviously a little bit of splash, but you just made your arc lights, much more damage oriented, and they do have splash, but they still kind of fill a very similar role to the saber. I don't think it would make sense to keep both and tech into both. I think, clearly you're going into arc lights, so you should sell out of your sabers. So that's something I'd like to see you do. And then from here, it's easy. Arc lights, typhoons, chaff, boom, done, sign, seal, delivered. You have yourself a winning composition. Yep. Okay, so Just to kind of explain it right now, you know, last round you used 50 on a sentry missile that didn't give you any value. This round you spent 50 in opportunity costs on a missile strike that didn't give you any value. And you have 400 supplies tied up in your 2 sabers. And I can understand not selling them this round in particular, but that's still 400 tied up in supplies that aren't going to go towards your win condition. So, you know, your economy right now isn't as smooth as it could be. And so that's something that I would try to even out a little bit going forward. I think orbital would be fine as well, but I imagine both of you are going to take efficient. Okay, range on 4 already. Wow. So ranging your arc lights this early and having 2 techs, you know, it's really early to do. I'm not saying it's bad, but you have to have the economy to support it. And so last round, if you sold the saber, right, that would have been plus 100 because you have to pay for field recovery. This round, you've been able to sell this one for another plus 200. So that'd be 300 additional supplies. You'd be able to afford the 500 cost for the range, right? No problem. And you'd still have money left over to maximize your deployments or invest even in another Typhoon if you wanted to. And so I don't think getting 2 techs this early is a problem on the same unit, but you have to have the economy to support it. Selling the saber last round, selling the saber this round, right? You'd have 450, you could throw Typhoon down, chaff, there'd be 2 deployments, you're all set. I don't think you have to shield here. I think shielding is a waste because even if you did orbital, it'd be on this side anyway. It probably wouldn't be, you know, on the left. And even if it was, you don't really have anything over there that's at risk of dying to an orbital. It wouldn't be good value for him, right? And so I definitely think you need to not spend the 100 here. It's a waste of resources, but it's also not utilizing a deployment, which is, you know, a bigger issue going forward as well. And you have 4,200 HP almost. You don't need to shield anyway this early, right? Like I could understand if you had the extra supplies left over and you wanted to shield your right side, but you don't. So definitely don't spend the resources there. And right now things seem to be going pretty okay. You know, the range on your arc lights, the Typhoons are doing work, shaft clear especially. You know, everything seems to be trending in your direction right now. You just have to stay on top of it. I'm worried though that the inefficiency in your economy is going to catch up a little bit. You're not maximizing deployments, but you're also wasting resources, and those are not 2 good combinations. Alright, so your opponent's going to take improved firepower 100%, and I would say probably take improved firepower yourself as well. You want to give it to your Typhoons. It's getting to the point where his Mustangs are going to start becoming a big problem. Right now, they're level 3 with improved. It's not something that you want to deal with. Okay, hold up. What? You elite recruited Mustangs and teched into range? Let's talk about this for a second. First, I would say your Arclight, I think, should probably be positioned more centralized. I know you want to get this side taken care of, and I agree it should be. But right now, the biggest threat on the board are these Mustangs. And they're kind of go in the middle, and the thing that you have stopping them the most is a level 1 Arclight, and it's probably not the best situation in the world. You do have a level 3 Arclight that's there as well, but if you had another 2 somewhere around here, I think it would do a lot better to stop this threat. But let's talk about these Mustangs. Okay, so you teched into range, you gave them improved firepower, and I agree, you know, improved firepower goes very well with Mustangs. You elite recruited them, unlocked them, but you already have Typhoons, so that's another redundancy issue that we're talking about. So right now you have 50 supplies spent on the sentry missile, 50 supplies and opportunity cost spent on the missile strike. You have 100 supplies spent on that shield. You have 400 supplies tied up in your sabers. You have 300 supplies tied up in your Typhoons. Even when you account for field recovery and you don't count the 50 from the missile strike, let's be generous, that's still 750 supplies that you have either wasted or have tied up in units that aren't going towards your win condition right now. So with the additional supplies, you'd be able to drop 3 elite recruited Mustangs right now with range, right? And even if you had to borrow to do it, next round's likely going to be a unit drop round, which means you can either sell out of it and boost your economy, or you can just make it a chaff round and invest further into your win condition and catch up on upgrades. So I'd say so far you're doing a really, really good job. I think you just need to clean up a couple things, you know, sell out of what isn't going to contribute to your win condition. You know, you don't need the sabers, they're a little bit redundant. You're not going to tech into them, and you don't need the Typhoons if you're going to make a switch to Mustangs. And I don't think he even had to go to Mustangs, so I'm being completely honest. I think you could have stuck with Typhoons. I think the missile right here is fine. It just needs to be brought over a little bit because you want to protect like this area. So you're still protecting them coming from here, but you also protect them from here, and you protect them coming from the corner, like if they blitzed you with wasps or something, for example. Not that he would this game, but just as an example. And it's much easier to manipulate this missile than it would be if it was back more covering this area, because all you have to do is throw down crawlers right here with wasps behind it, and you know this missile is going to take the crawlers and then the wasps come take the tower. But if you had the missile further back and you put down crawlers here with wasps, your stuff right here would come kill the crawlers and then leave, right? It'd come kill the crawlers and then leave, and then his wasp would hit the missile. So that's why you do it that way. Here's the thing. Both of you are susceptible to getting hit with Wraith with armor, right? Big Wraith with armor. Now, the counter to the Wraith is also on the board though. So the melting point will counter the Wraith 100%, obviously if it gets a lock on. So the melter is going to counter both the Rhino and the Wraith. So 100% your opponent's going to go melter, and you should go melter as well because, you know, it counters both the Rhino and the Wraith. So I would say take the melter, see what he places down just to make sure it's not the Wraith or the Rhino. And then if he doesn't place the Wraith or the Rhino down, then you sell the melting point and go more into your win condition. Okay, so you actually went Wraith. I think this is a mistake because he's going to pick the melter because there's no way he goes Wraith the Wraith. And I'll say, even if he did go Wraith the Wraith, you lose that battle because he has the higher level Mustangs and he's just kind of, the game's kind of trending in this direction right now. Okay, so you immediately go into armor as well. All right, so you got these Typhoons. I'm thinking you're buying Typhoons for the shaft clear because, you know, that is obviously something that you mentioned. But you already committed to Mustang, so that's the direction you have to go. You need to sell out of these Typhoons, not invest more resources into them. That's 300, right? That's a lot. 100% you can't go for these Mustangs with the missile strike because your opponent is without a doubt going to shield them, especially because he already has a pattern of doing so, and shield is available. If you wanted to be really cheeky, you can throw something down on the flank, like over here, to draw the Mustangs this way. That way, if your opponent put the shield forward, you know, there's a chance that you could catch him off guard by having the Mustangs actually go back a little bit. But your opponent is very smart. Look at his shield placement. He's accounting for the fact that you can manipulate those Mustangs and to go in a different direction and hitting them with the missile. This guy is not going to be hit with a missile strike. He's a top 25 player in the world for a reason, right? So you have to go for something that you can actually hit, like these. You know what I mean? Because you want to get some value out of that missile strike, otherwise it's just a complete waste. Another thing is that you have arc lights, big arc lights, Typhoons, and sabers. So it makes even more sense for him to go melter because melter is good into those things versus, you know, whereas you, if you chose melter, it wouldn't be really good against any of his stuff. Your composition is slow and ranged, and so it doesn't really synergize well with the Wraith, whereas his composition is actually a lot faster and would synergize better with it. So it's just going to kind of be in a situation where it kind of went ahead of everything and died, kind of like it did. And it didn't even lock onto the level 2, which is the sad part. It actually went to the other one that he placed down, which is now a level 2. So not looking good right now. And blind teching into it too, you know, that's a big oof. It's only 150 because of tech efficiency, but still. I could see your opponent going haste, absorption, or EMP. I like that you went haste. So I see you got level 1 on your tower finally on attack. That's good. I would say try to get 1-1 upgrades by round 5. And if you can't because you don't own the economy, it's perfectly fine. But, you know, just shoot for that. Also, I'd just like to point out, do you see how you have arc lights, you have Typhoons, you have sabers, you have a Wraith, you have Mustangs, and then of course you have chaff, but you're going to always have chaff. You know, you're split into way too many different unit types. And the problem is further compounded by the redundancy of the charge shot arc lights with the sabers and the Typhoons with the Mustangs. But I will say, I really, really like EMP here. I think that is a fantastic decision. And I like the creativity of the mobile beacon. I would rather you sell out of it, if I'm being 100% honest. But I do like the creativity of it. You're moving away from the melter. It's very smart. And you paid the range tax, which I think is good too. You're getting more chaff, which is good. Got a subterranean blitz. Subterranean Blitz will help with the Mustang, so that's good. He doesn't have a lot of chaff clear. He does have, you know, some arc lights. All right, so you got 1-1 now. That's fantastic. Unfortunately, your opponent just got 2-1. Again, round 7's a little late to get upgrades. Try to shoot for 5, but I'm glad that you, you know, you did get it. Your opponent is getting, he's paid the range tax as well. It's very unfortunate, man. You know, he's a top 25 player. He's not going to make a lot of mistakes, and you know, that could have been an area that maybe you had an advantage on, but unfortunately you didn't. Oof. Even his backup Mustangs aren't his backup Mustangs anymore. Now they're level 5 with haste. Okay. I mean, your race stayed alive a little bit. It kind of took the aggro of, you know, one of his Mustang packs, which was good. You know, it was a close round, but unfortunately he just has a couple big melters can't take care of. I would take additional deployment slot personally. I could see your opponent giving his melter anti-interference module. Ooh, I really love the fact that you gave your arc lights elite and you sold your wraith. So I think it was a really good call to sell your wraith and going into elite marksman on your arc lights. You recognize, you know, that is your win condition 100%. You got to go with it. All right, good oil, good oil. I know you mentioned that you don't like using fire. I think even if you put down one thing of Stormcallers and gave it fire, you could have ignited this. And also it would have just been good for, you know, helping you with chaff clear and everything else as well, especially against the Mustangs. Yeah, you know, this is just the unfortunate case that he got a couple big melters going and you just didn't really have an answer for it. I think you could take marksman here, maybe elite recruit for marksman. Okay, I think that's a better missile strike target because you know he's going to shield this for sure, and this one's already shield, and he's going to shield this for sure. I think you can probably anticipate he might shield these Mustangs. It might be better just to go for this chaff right here. But I don't think it's bad to go for these Mustangs if you really wanted to. I don't think that's a bad missile strike. Okay, so you got your own melters with range. It's interesting. I think your thought process is can't beat them, join them, right? You get a lock onto his melter first, then maybe you can win. I think Shielded Fangs, maybe dropping 4 things of Shielded Fangs down. Dropping 4 things of Shielded Fangs down, putting up a couple missiles yourself to hit his, you know, front line, throwing up a couple shields, you know, whatever you can. Because if your arc lights hit his melters, you can actually do a lot of work. There's only one that could survive it. It's the one with the anti-interference module. I mean, look, bro, your opponent is an absolute monster, right? Like, you played a very good game. You just have to be a little bit more efficient, a little bit cleaner if you want to beat somebody on his level. I do think you can win this game. I think you had a really good chance, actually. You know, there was just a few things that need to change, and it could have been yours. So let's go over it and how we can clean it up a little bit so that you could be more consistent going forward. Like I said, you played a phenomenal game, but you're a high-level player, and I wouldn't be doing you justice if I took it easy on you. So even though this was a good game, there's still a lot to clean up. So let's start with your economy. You spent 50 on a bad sentry missile in round 2. You had 100 on a shield and didn't use deployments. You had 400 tied up in sabers. You had 600 tied up in typhoons. You spent 100 for the card cost plus 600 tied up in the wraith. You then blind teched it for 150 because you had efficient tech. And of course, you had multiple deployments that you weren't utilizing. You spent 1 on the typhoon that you shouldn't have. And ultimately, when it was all said and done, even when you account for field recovery, it's 1900 supplies, 1900 that were either wasted or put into something that wasn't contributing to your win condition. That is a lot. The good news is that it's easy to fix. You just have to subscribe to the philosophy that less is more sometimes. Once you decided that you're going to go carry arcs with charge shot, then I would say get out of the sabers. You know, if you have Typhoons, don't elite recruit Mustangs, or if you do want to go into Mustangs, then sell out of the Typhoons. Definitely don't drop another thing of Typhoons when you already have both, because you already need to sell out of Typhoons anyway. You know, you committed to the Mustang, so commit, right? So you want to reduce that redundancy, but you also want to reduce the unit types at the same time. The Wraith wasn't a problem in and of itself. I think the problem was that the Melter was offered in the same card drop as the Wraith, and the Melter will counter the Wraith, of course. You know, knowing that your opponent is definitely going to take the Melter, you also had a composition that went really well for the Melter. And so you have to know that he's going to take the Melter in that situation. And so I think the problem with choosing the Wraith there was more so the choice than it was the actual unit type. So work on reducing the redundancy of units, reducing the amount of unit types you have, like DPS especially. You know, it's okay to have high level cards and sell out of them eventually, like bridge units. It doesn't have to fit in your composition, you know, like a puzzle piece. Sometimes you need situational counters that fall outside the skill set of your current composition. You know what I mean? But just in general, and I'm talking about your core composition, you have to reduce the redundancy. And then those supplies have to be funneled into your actual core composition, right? Second thing is Chaff. I think you did an actually pretty good job with Chaff. I really like the fact that you went Mediterranean Blitz into his Mustangs. I think that was a really good call. The only thing I'd say to that is maybe you could drop a little bit more Fangs and then give them shield. In terms of upgrades, I think you're a little bit delayed. I'd like to see attack enhancement 1 and defense enhancement 1 by rounds 5. So get one of them somewhere around 3 or 4 and get the other one on 4 or 5. Sometimes you run into a situation where you're just stretched for resources and you can't do it on round 5, and that's perfectly okay. Just use it as a guideline. I thought you did a good job mass recruiting when you needed to and paying the range stacks. I'd say on shields and sentry missiles especially, don't use them unless you have like a tier 3 specific reason. And what I mean by that is you have to have a very, very specific reason, right? So let's say tier 1 is like, oh, it's going to help me. Well, that's not a very good reason. Let's say tier 2 is like, oh, it's going to help me on the left side of the tower, which is what you did. You know, that's not a good reason either, right? Tier 3 would be like, oh, it's going to help me on the left side of the tower against this unit specifically, and this is the reaction that I want from it, right? Like that's when you use a sentry missile. And so I'd say, you know, avoid spending any unnecessary resources. It's perfectly fine to use sentry missiles and shields, but just make sure there's a very specific reason to do so. I know you mentioned that you had a problem with chaff clear, and I think that's why you threw down the second Typhoon, and you don't like using fire. The oil that you had was really nice. I think it could have been accompanied by something like placing down a Stormcaller and teching in the fire. If you don't like using fire, totally understand. I don't use the Vulcans for similar reasons. I think the arc lights could have been supplemented very well by having 3 or 4 additional squads of Mustangs behind them. The Mustangs, especially if they're level 2, would help you clear chaff much more efficiently. And not only that, they would have served as chaff themselves, like a secondary or tertiary chaff against the melters that he had, protecting your arc lights in the process. Because at that point, once you tech into elite marksman on your arc lights, they're going to sit behind the Mustangs, right? They're going to sit here, your Mustangs are going to sit here, and his melters are over there, which means his melters have to get through your Mustangs first before they get to your arc lights, and your arc lights are going to apply EMP to all of his melters except the one that had anti-interference. So I think that would have been phenomenal, and not only giving you additional chaff, but also, you know, giving you additional chaff clear and supporting your main carry. You know, I just want to clarify that I'm only pointing these things out because I have the highest respect for Thonix as a player. We recently matched in a 1v1 tournament and they kicked my butt. Like, he's a very good player, but that doesn't mean he can't improve. And if you're 400 in watching this or you're 2000 in watching this, just want to say, focus on your economy, clean up your game. There's always room for improvement. If you want Mechabellum coaching, no matter your skill level, go ahead and send me a replay. Links found in the description. I'm Whooped. Thanks for watching.
This is Mechabellum, and it's going down. Whooped, got it.